Continuing the listing of the Mitzvot of the Rambam. This is part 4 of 3. I'm doing some makeup from on Shabbat. It was a very, very long, for me anyways, very long section of the listing of the Mitzvot, and so I didn't, and Saturday night I didn't do it, so I said, this is an extra burden, it's a lot of extra stuff, and maybe I'll drop it, but then I got back on board, so I'm making it up, and God willing, I'll continue with the Rambam together with the Chabad learning program. Okay, here we are. Hilchot Schirut, the laws of employer-employee relations. They contain 7 mitzvot, 3 positive commandments and 4 negative commandments. They are the laws governing a hired worker and a paid watchman. To pay a worker his wage when due, not to delay payment of a worker's wage after it falls due. That a worker be allowed to eat from the produce with which he is working. That a worker not eat from this during the time he should be working. That a worker should not take more than what he eats. Not to muzzle an ox with any other animal while it is treading grain. The laws of borrowed and entrusted objects. They contain 2 positive commandments. They are the laws pertaining to a borrower, the laws pertaining to an unpaid watchman, the laws of lenders and borrowers. They contain 12 mitzvot, 4 positive commandments and 8 negative commandments. They are to lend money to a poor and unfortunate person, not to demand repayment of his debt, to demand repayment of a Gentile's debt, not to forcefully take security from a debtor, to return security to a debtor when he needs it, not to delay returning security to a poor debtor when he needs it, not to take security from a widow, not to take utensils used to prepare food as security, not to give a loan at interest, for a borrower not to accept a loan at interest, for a person not to render assistance to a lender or borrower with regard to a loan at interest, for him not to act as a witness or a guarantor, not to compose a contract of loan, and to borrow from a Gentile and lend to him at interest. I'm just quoting it. These things might be a cause of anti-Semitism. So I'm stating, for all those out there, that I am just reading the Rambam. I don't confirm or deny it. It's just an outside person reading it. The same disclaimer that I make for the Talmud as well. The laws governing disputes between plaintiffs and defendants. They contain 1 positive commandment. The laws governing claims issued by a plaintiff when the defendant either admits to them or denies them. The laws governing inheritances. They contain 1 positive commandment. The laws governing the order of inheritance. Thus, this book contains a total of 23 mitzvot, 11 positive commandments, and 12 negative commandments. Wow. Excuse me. Sorry about that. The book of Judges. It consists of 5 halachot. They are in order. The laws of courts and the punishments over which they have jurisdiction, the laws of witnesses, the laws of rebellious ones, the laws of mourning, the laws of kings and their wars, the laws of the courts, and the punishments over which they have jurisdiction. They contain 30 mitzvot, 10 positive commandments, and 20 negative commandments. They are to appoint judges, not to appoint a judge who does not know the proper manner of judgment, to follow the majority if there is a difference of opinion among the judges, not to issue a death sentence if there is a majority of only one condemning the defendant, Rather, a majority of at least 2 is necessary. For a person who argued in favor of acquittal in a capital case, not to argue for a conviction, to execute by stoning one condemned to death, to execute by burning one condemned to death, to execute by decapitation one condemned to death, to execute by strangulation one condemned to death, to hang the corpses of certain sinners who were executed, to bury the executed person on the day of his execution, not to allow his corpse to remain unburied overnight, not to allow a sorcerer to live, to punish a sinner with lashes, not to add blows when lashing a sinner, not to kill an innocent person based on an apparent conclusion, not to punish a person forced to commit a sin, not to have mercy on a person who killed or injured a colleague, not to have mercy on a poor person in judgment, not to, meaning don't give extra mercy on them because they are poor. You have to treat them fair. If they're right, they're right, they're wrong, they're wrong. That's what it means. Not to honor a man of stature in judgment. But if he's right, then he's right. If he's wrong, he's wrong. 21. Not to pervert judgment against a sinner even though he is known to be a transgressor. Not to act deceitfully in judgment. Not to pervert the justice due to converts or orphans, to render a righteous judgment. For a judge not to fear rendering a just judgment because of a powerful person, and not to accept a bribe, not to accept a false report, not to curse the judges, not to curse the Nasi, not to curse any other Jew of moral repute. The laws of witnesses. They contain 8 mitzvot, 3 positive commandments and 5 negative commandments. They are, for a person who knows relevant testimony to testify in court, to question and cross-examine witnesses, for a witness not to render a decision in a capital case in which he has testified, not to render a decision based on the testimony of a single witness, for a sinner not to act as a witness, for a relative not to act as a witness, not to give false testimony, to punish a false witness with the punishment he plotted to have the defendant receive. Hilchot Mamrim, the laws of rebellious ones. They contain 9 mitzvot, 3 positive commandments and 6 negative commandments. They are to follow the instructions given by the high court, not to deviate from their words, not to add to the Torah, neither to the mitzvot of the written law, nor to their explanation which was transmitted by the oral tradition, not to detract from the mitzvot, not to curse one's father or mother, not to strike one's father or mother, to honor one's father and mother, to fear one's father and mother, for a son not to rebel against his father's and mother's commands. Laws of mourning. They contain 4 mitzvot, 1 positive commandment and 3 negative commandments. They are to mourn for one's relatives. Even a priest must become impure and mourn for his relatives. A person may not mourn for those executed by the court. Therefore, I've included these laws in this book because they are connected with the burial of a person on the day of his death, which is a positive commandment. For a high priest not to become impure because of his relatives, for him not to enter a place where a corpse is lying, for a common priest not to contract impurity from contact with a human corpse, with the exception of his relatives. The laws of kings and their wars. They contain 23 mitzvot, 10 positive commandments and 13 negative commandments. They are to appoint a king over Israel, not to appoint a convert as a king, that the king should not accumulate many wives, that the king should not accumulate many horses, that the king should not accumulate much silver and gold, to annihilate the 7 nations, not to allow any of them to remain alive, to wipe out the descendants of Amalek, to remember what Amalek did to us, not to forget Amalek's wicked deeds and their ambushing of of our people, ambushing our people on the journey to Eretz Israel, not to dwell in Egypt, to make an offer of peace to the inhabitants of the city to which we lay siege, and to carry out the Torah's instructions, whether they sue for peace or not. Not to make an offer of peace to Ammon and Moab when we lay siege to their land. Not to destroy fruit producing trees in the process of a siege. To prepare a place outside of the army camp where the soldiers can go to defecate. For a soldier to prepare a shovel with which he can dig, to cover his excrement. To anoint a priest to speak to the soldiers at the time of battle. To allow a person who becomes betrothed to build a house or plant a vineyard, to rejoice in his acquisition for a full year, and to be sent back from the army camp, not to call on them for any public duties, neither the needs of the community, the needs of the army, nor the like, not to panic and flee in the midst of battle, the law of Yifat Torah, not to sell Yifat Torah, not to enslave Yifat Torah after having relations with her. This book contains a total of 74 mitzvot, 24 positive commandments and 47 negative commandments. There are a total of 83 halachot in these 14 books. Now I will begin to explain the rules governing each mitzvah and the relevant laws that are included with them, according to the order of these halachot, with the help of the Almighty. Interesting.